Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Corner Coding. So today we are gonna learn something about TLS or Transport Layer Security with Spring Boot. We will try to configure a RESTful Spring Boot application and create our own self-signed server certificates and configure SSL or TLS with Spring Boot. To begin with, we will need a Spring Boot application. So I will be using start.spring.io, the Spring initializer tool, to get our boilerplate application. After generating the project, now I have imported this to my Eclipse workspace. So it's basically a boilerplate Java Spring Boot Java application. Now, before we start our TLS configuration, we will need some server certificates, and I'll be using JDK's key tool to generate those certificates. So key tool comes packed with JDK. So if you have JDK installed on your system, so key tool would be there by default. Another tool which you can use is OpenSSL. So that is also a very good one to generate certificates. But for this tutorial, I'll be using key tool, which is pre-configured, or it comes packaged with JDK. So let's generate our certificates. So key tool has a command called gen key. So this would be basically generating a RSA key pair. We need to give it an option, like first option should be alias. So this is the name or the namespace which will help us to recognize that particular certificate in a key store. So alias would be my server. Next option would be key algorithm. So key ALG, and that would be RSA. The next is key size. What should be the size of our key? So I would be using 2048 bits. Next is validity. How long I want the key store to be valid. So I would be using 700. Let's just give it 300. That should be fine. Next, when we generate the key, it should be protected by a password. So I'll give key password. So let it be admin, and then I would be storing this key in the particular Java key store. So it would need something a password for the key store as well. So store pass, let's make them same, admin, and now the key store file name. So my dash server store.jks. So okay, boom, there is an error. So that error is the key password must be at least 6 character and admin is just 5. Fine, not a problem. Let's go ahead and change this. Just add one numeric 123 to that. So it will ask for some basic information. So let's give it corner, name of your organization unit, say corner coding LLP organization. So let's just give it corner coding. City, let's just give some city name like Dallas. province, state, let's just give it DL, country, say US. Okay, so that's like the data you have provided, is it correct? If you say no, then it will again ask you to reprovide the data. If we say yes, just it will go ahead and create our store. If you just give it an else SSL, so we see that my server dot keystore.jks is already created. Now we can go ahead and use this particular key store in our application to secure it. So after creating the key store, let's go back to our workspace and add a secure controller. So I'll be creating a simple class like SSL test controller. I'll use Spring's @REST controller annotation so that Spring knows it's a REST controller. And I'll be adding a method public, and let this return string test SSL. It takes nothing, and it just return one string success. That's just annotated with request mapping so that I can give a particular endpoint to it. So let's just give value of this request mapping should be like slash test slash SSL, and that should be fine because by default the method should be get. So that should be fine on the coding part. Next we need to add some server properties over here. Since Spring Boot comes with an embedded Tomcat, we can directly give some properties over here, and Spring Boot will auto configure SSL for us based on the properties and the certificates and the passwords and the alias we have given. So the first thing would be like when we use SSL on a Spring Boot application, the server port should be 8443 and not 8080, because by default Tomcat's password is 8080. So a Spring Boot application by default starts with Tomcat. I mean, a Spring Boot web application starts with Tomcat, so the default port would be 8080. But since it's an SSL configuration, so we need to change that port to 8080. So the property would be server.port, and let's give it 8443. So next we need to add the server key alias, server.ssl Okay, I guess that was my server. Let's go back and check once. Yeah, the alias was my server. The next thing is the server key password. Let me just copy this, and I'll just, because this is gonna be the same thing for all of them. So password was admin23. Next would be the key store file. So this will take the full path of the key store file. So if you're keeping it in your class path, it should be like class path colon file name dot jks, so something like that. I will, Let's replace it with the one we have. So let's go to pwd. Let's take the entire path and then append the key store file name. Key store provider. So provider is like who is providing the Java crypto. So by default it should be Sun, like the Sun is the default crypto provider for Java. We have other crypto providers like Bouncy Castle as well, so we might use it if required, but for this one I'll be sticking to the default. Next is the type of the key store. So we have a Java key store, JKS. So dot key store equals to JKS. So that should be enough for the configuration. To run this application, we can directly run it from Eclipse. Go ahead and run as Java application, but I will prefer to run this from the terminal. So let's go back to our terminal and fire this up. Maven Spring Boot run. Okay, now the application is up and running, and we can see here our endpoint test slash SSL is also mapped. Let's go ahead and fire up a browser and try to hit our URL. So that should be localhost 8443 slash test slash SSL. Now this page isn't working. Okay, so okay, fine, I have not given HTTPS. So since the certificate we have created is a self-signed certificate, so our browser does not trust the self-signed certificates. Ideally this certificate should be signed by a valid certification or certificate authority, or CA. So in a production environment we always generate a certificate signing request and send it to a CA, so the CA will sign it back and we will import it in our key store or in the certificate chain. So that's when the browser can trust our certificate. But for now it will give us an error cert authority invalid. The certification authority is invalid, but it has found the certificate, so this means our SSL is working. So let's go ahead to advance and let's proceed. So we get the success response. So next we will be trying to configure our Spring Boot application to redirect from HTTP to HTTPS. So if someone hits our application with the HTTP endpoint, it should automatically redirect to HTTPS. In order to do that, we need to add a bean in our application configuration. So let's open our configuration of the Spring Boot application class. So I need the embedded servlet container factory. let me name it create servlet container, and said that I would need Tomcat embedded. Now we are using embedded because it's the embedded Tomcat. Okay, now I need to override this particular the post process context method. Let's remove the auto-generated stuff. Let's create a security constraint equals to new security constraint dot set user constraint, and let's make it confidential. Next we need a security collection, security collection equals new security collection. And we need to add the pattern of the URL that now we need to add the pattern. Let's say for example what all URLs to be redirected. So for now I'm adding context root /star, so all URL will be redirected. Constraints dot add collection, let's add the security collection to it. And now finally I need to add the constraint to the context. Add constraint. Okay, so this will give me the new Tomcat container with an overridden post-process context method. So I've overridden the method. Now let's add the connector to the container. Tomcat container dot add additional Tomcat connectors. So let's name it redirect connector HTTP. So this would be a method, so this would be basically a new method. So I'll be just adding this method in a while. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, create method. So let's create this method. Connector redirect connector equals to new connector. Okay, I just need to give what type of connector it is, so I'll just mention the package name or Apache Coyote HTTP 11.http 1 neo protocol. So that should be fine. Org Apache Coyote HTTP 11 HTTP 1 1. Okay, it should be HTTP 11 neo protocol. Okay, that should be fine. Now we need to set the scheme of this connector. Connector dot set. Okay, that's not the connector, sorry. Redirect connector dot set scheme, and it is, since we're writing a redirect connector from HTTP to HTTPS, so for the connect scheme for this connector it would be HTTP. Now we need to write the port redirect connector dot set port, and it should be 8080, from which port to which port we want to redirect it. Redirect connector dot set secure. So this is not a secure connector, I mean it's not secured with TLS, so that should be false. And finally, which port to redirect it, so redirect connector dot set redirect port, and that should be 8443. And now let's return this connector. Return redirect connector. So that should be enough. Okay, there is one error. Okay, I have not imported the bean, so let's go ahead and import this bean. And what's the error? Okay, so I have not returned the tomcat. Okay, so that should be fine. Okay, so we have saved it. Now let's try to run this and test if it is redirecting from 8080 to 8443. So let's stop the previous execution and execute the same command again. Okay, so now we can see Tomcat started on port 8443 for HTTPS and 8080 for HTTP. So let's start our browser and type. First, let's test if the HTTPS is still working. Okay, so HTTPS is still working. Let's now remove HTTPS and make it 8080. Okay, so sorry, I missed an L over here. Yes, so our localhost 8080 gets redirected to localhost 8443. So it's working fine. So that's all for today's tutorial. See you in the next tutorial with some more interesting topics. Do let me know if you want anything else to be covered on this SSL or TLS part, or any other Spring Boot or Java topic to be covered. Don't forget to like, share and comment on my video, and do subscribe on the channel. Thank you. Have a good day.